The crisp autumn air swept through the bustling city streets, swirling golden leaves around the feet of pedestrians hurrying past. Inside the grand, glass-fronted bank, the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air as customers stood in line, tapping their feet impatiently. Among them stood a young black girl, no older than 15, clutching an envelope filled with neatly stacked bills. She shifted her weight from foot to foot, nervously eyeing the bank teller behind the polished counter. Next, a sharp voice called. The girl stepped forward, her heart hammering in her chest. She was used to handling money. Her mother had taught her everything about financial responsibility. She knew how to fill out a deposit slip, how to balance an account, and most importantly, she knew the value of every single dollar she held. "Hi," she said politely, sliding the envelope and the deposit slip across the counter. "I'd like to deposit this into my mother's account, please." The teller, a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair and an air of self-importance, barely spared her a glance. Her name tag read Karen Wells. She sighed dramatically, inspecting the envelope with narrowed eyes. "And where exactly did you get this money?" The girl's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "It's my mom's. She asked me to deposit it for her." Karen snorted. "That's a lot of money for a kid like you to be carrying around. Are you sure this isn't stolen?" A few heads turned in the bank. The girl felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "It's not stolen," she said firmly. "It belongs to my mother. Here's the account number." She tapped the deposit slip with a trembling finger. Karen pursed her lips, eyeing the girl's simple jeans and hoodie. "Sorry, but I can't accept this. You need to have an adult with you." The girl frowned. "I've done this before. My mom lets me deposit money all the time." "Not today," Karen said, crossing her arms. "I don't know where you got this cash, and until I get some real proof, I'm not putting it in any account." The girl's stomach twisted. She had never felt so humiliated. "Can I speak to a manager?" she asked, her voice tight. Karen smirked. "I am the manager on duty." The girl's heart sank. "Please, just call my mom. She'll explain everything." Karen scoffed, shaking her head. "No need. We don't take deposits from people who can't verify their sources. Now, if you're done wasting my time, I suggest you leave before I have security escort you out." Tears pricked at the corners of the girl's eyes. She had never been treated this way before. She took a deep breath, willing herself not to cry. Without another word, she grabbed the envelope, turned on her heel, and stormed out of the bank. Karen watched her leave, shaking her head. "Kids these days," she muttered under her breath. She had no idea the storm that was coming. Outside the bank, the crisp autumn air did little to cool the burning humiliation in the young girl's chest. She clutched the envelope of cash tightly, her fingers trembling as she pulled out her phone. With a deep breath, she pressed the call button and held it to her ear. "Hey, sweetheart," her mother's warm voice answered almost immediately. "Did everything go okay at the bank?" The girl swallowed hard, her voice thick with emotion. "No, Mom. They wouldn't let me deposit the money." There was a brief pause. "What do you mean?" She exhaled sharply, fighting back tears. "The lady at the counter, she said I couldn't deposit it. The words caught in her throat. She thought I stole it." A sharp silence hung between them. Then, in a tone that was calm but laced with controlled fury, her mother asked, "What exactly did she say?" The girl took a shaky breath. "She said I couldn't deposit the money without an adult. And when I told her it was yours, she said she needed proof, like I was lying. Mom, she treated me like a criminal in front of everyone." Her mother's voice was measured, but there was an unmistakable steel beneath it. "Stay right there. I'm on my way." The call ended. The girl took a deep breath, looking back at the bank. The massive glass windows reflected the city skyline, the inside still bustling with people oblivious to what had just happened. She had never felt so powerless before. But if there was one thing she knew about her mother, it was that she never let injustice slide. 15 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The back door swung open and out stepped her mother, tall, poised, and exuding an air of authority that turned heads wherever she went. Dressed in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit and stilettos that clicked sharply against the pavement, she was the embodiment of power. Her dark brown skin glowed under the afternoon sun, her braided hair pulled into a high bun. But it was her eyes, sharp, determined, and utterly unshaken, that sent a clear message. She strode toward her daughter, giving her a quick once-over. "Are you okay?" The girl nodded, though her throat still felt tight. "Yeah." Her mother's jaw tightened. "Let's go." Together, they stepped back into the bank. The moment they entered, the energy in the room shifted. Customers stole glances at the confident woman who walked in with purpose, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a war drum. The girl stayed close by her side as they approached the same counter where Karen stood. Karen glanced up from her screen, her expression unreadable for a brief moment until recognition dawned. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "Can I help you?" The mother's smile was polite but cold. "Yes, you can. My daughter just called me about a problem she had here." She placed the envelope of money onto the counter. "She attempted to deposit this into my account and you denied her." Karen straightened, her hands folding in front of her. "I was simply following bank policy. We have to verify the source of large cash deposits." The mother's smile didn't waver, but her eyes darkened. "And you assumed she stole it?" Karen hesitated. "I never said that." "You implied it," she countered smoothly. "And you embarrassed my daughter in front of everyone instead of handling the situation professionally." Karen exhaled sharply. "Look, if you're here to make a complaint, you can schedule an appointment with the branch manager. Otherwise, I suggest you handle your banking appropriately next time." The girl saw the flash of anger in her mother's eyes, but instead of raising her voice, she simply reached into her handbag and pulled out a business card. With deliberate calm, she slid it across the counter toward Karen. Karen picked it up and read it. The color drained from her face. "CEO, Whitmore Financial Group." The girl watched as Karen's confident posture crumbled. Her mother tilted her head slightly. "I think we should call the real branch manager now. Don't you?" Karen's fingers trembled slightly as she set the business card down. The weight of her mistake settled on her like a crushing force. The woman standing before her, the same woman whose daughter she had just humiliated, was no ordinary customer. She was the CEO of Whitmore Financial Group, one of the largest financial consulting firms in the country. A few nearby employees had noticed the tension and were subtly watching. Customers who had been waiting in line had also picked up on the shift in energy. The room had become uncomfortably quiet. Karen forced a tight smile. There must have been some misunderstanding." The girl's mother raised an eyebrow. "No, there wasn't." Her voice was steady, unshaken. "My daughter came in here to make a simple deposit, something she's done countless times before. Instead of treating her with the same courtesy you would extend to any other customer, you chose to profile her." Karen swallowed hard. "That's not true." The mother's eyes narrowed. "Oh, really? Then explain why she was questioned about the source of the money when she followed all proper procedures. Why she was denied a transaction that your bank policy allows." She leaned in slightly, her presence commanding. "Or is it that you simply didn't believe a young black girl could be trusted with that amount of money?" A murmur rippled through the customers standing nearby. Karen's face turned a deep shade of red. I was just doing my job," she stammered. "We have protocols." "Don't insult my intelligence," the mother interrupted. "I know banking regulations inside and out. There was no policy requiring my daughter to be interrogated and humiliated in front of strangers." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, a voice called from across the bank. "Is there a problem here?" A tall man in a navy suit approached, his face tight with concern. His name tag read Michael Harrington, branch manager. His gaze flickered from Karen to the CEO and his expression shifted instantly. The mother turned to him, her tone icy but professional. "Yes, there is. Your employee just discriminated against my daughter, refused her deposit, and implied that she was attempting fraud without any justification." Michael's eyes widened. I am so sorry. I had no idea this happened." He shot Karen a look that was both confused and irritated. "Karen, can I speak to you privately?" Karen fumbled for words, but the mother didn't let up. "No, you'll speak to me right here in front of my daughter, because she deserves to hear exactly how this is going to be handled." Michael looked slightly panicked. He cleared his throat and nodded. "Of course, ma'am. First, let me apologize. This is absolutely not how we treat our customers. We take allegations of discrimination very seriously." Karen's mouth tightened. "I wasn't discriminating against anyone." The mother turned to her daughter. "Sweetheart, why don't you tell him exactly what happened?" The girl hesitated for only a moment before straightening her shoulders. She recounted everything, how she had waited in line, followed every procedure, and had still been treated as suspicious simply because Karen refused to believe she was trustworthy. Michael's expression darkened as she spoke. By the time she finished, he looked furious. He turned to Karen. "Is this true? Karen shifted uncomfortably. I was just being cautious. Cautious? Michael repeated. Or biased? Karen's lips pressed together in a thin line, but she didn't respond. Michael exhaled sharply and turned back to the mother. Again, I sincerely apologize. This is unacceptable. I can assure you we will be addressing this immediately. The mother studied him for a moment before speaking. I want more than an apology. Michael nodded quickly. Of course. If you'd be willing to step into my office, we can discuss this further. She gave him a pointed look. I have a better idea. Let's handle the deposit first. Properly this time. Michael blinked, then nodded. Absolutely. He quickly stepped behind the counter and personally processed the transaction himself. This time, the girl watched as her money was counted, verified, and successfully deposited without unnecessary questioning. As the receipt printed, Michael handed it to her with an apologetic smile. Again, I am so sorry for how you were treated today. The girl took the receipt but remained silent. Her mother, however, wasn't done. She turned back to Karen. Now, about the consequences. Karen visibly stiffened. Consequences? The mother's lips curled into a cold, knowing smile. You didn't think you'd just walk away from this, did you? Karen's face paled, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. The weight of what was happening finally seemed to sink in. Customers and employees alike were still watching, the tension in the bank thick enough to cut with a knife. The mother crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. You publicly humiliated my daughter. You refused her service based on nothing but your own assumptions. You treated her like a criminal for no reason other than the color of her skin. And now, you think you can just brush it off with a weak excuse. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. Michael, the branch manager, cleared his throat awkwardly. Ma'am, I completely understand your frustration. I assure you that we take this very seriously. There will be an internal review. The mother's sharp gaze cut to him. No, there will be action. And it will be immediate. Michael hesitated. Of course, She pulled out her phone, her fingers gliding over the screen with practiced ease. I'll be making some calls. Karen swallowed hard. Wait, you don't need to do that. The mother's eyes snapped back to her, and Karen flinched. I do need to do this, because if I don't, you'll do it to someone else. Some other black child will walk into this bank and be treated like they don't belong. And I won't allow that. Michael's forehead glistened with sweat. Please, let's take a step back. The mother held up a finger, silencing him as she lifted the phone to her ear. It rang twice before a deep male voice answered. This is Charles Reiner, Regional Director. How can I help you? Karen's breath hitched. The mother's tone was as smooth as steel. Hello, Charles. It's Naomi Whitmore. I need to discuss a serious issue with your bank's customer service and the racial profiling happening under your watch. Silence. Then a slow exhale on the other end. Naomi, that does not sound good. It isn't, she said bluntly. I'm standing in one of your branches right now. My daughter was just refused service by a teller who assumed she was committing fraud. A sharp inhale. That's unacceptable. It is, she agreed. And I expect you to do something about it. Now. Charles didn't hesitate. Give me the branch location. Naomi rattled it off. Karen looked like she might faint. Understood, Charles said. I'll be making some calls. Immediately. You have my word. Naomi nodded once. Good, because if this isn't handled properly, I will personally make sure the media hears about it. And I have very powerful friends in high places. Another pause. Then Charles's voice came back, firm and assured. Consider it handled, Naomi. Expect a call from me within the hour with updates. Excellent. She ended the call and slid her phone back into her bag. Karen's face was ghostly pale. Please, I didn't mean. Naomi tilted her head slightly. You did mean. That's the problem. Michael swallowed hard, sensing the inevitable. He turned to Karen, his jaw tightening. I'll need you to step into my office. Now. Karen's eyes darted around, as if searching for an escape. Michael, Now, Karen, he repeated, his voice cold. Defeated, she cast one last look at Naomi and her daughter before forcing herself to step out from behind the counter. The walk to Michael's office felt like a death march. As the door closed behind them, the mother turned back to her daughter. Her expression softened. "Are you okay?" The girl exhaled, relief washing over her. "Yeah." Naomi took her daughter's hand, squeezing it gently. "Let's go." And as they walked out of the bank, every customer and employee who had witnessed the moment watched them go, knowing they had just seen the kind of justice that was long overdue. As Naomi and her daughter stepped out of the bank, the tension inside still lingered like an unshakable shadow. But outside, the cool autumn air felt different, lighter. The girl inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of humiliation lift ever so slightly. Her mother's grip on her hand was firm yet reassuring. "You did nothing wrong," Naomi said, her voice calm but resolute. "Remember that." The girl nodded, though the sting of what had happened still clung to her. "I just don't get it," she admitted. "Why did she assume the worst about me?" Naomi stopped, turning to face her daughter fully. "Because some people see our skin before they see our character," she said softly. "It's unfair. It's infuriating. But it's the reality we face. And when it happens, we don't shrink. We don't let them define us. We fight back, with dignity, intelligence, and power." The girl swallowed hard, looking down at the bank receipt still clutched in her hand. "I just wish it didn't have to be like this." "So do I," Naomi admitted. "But change doesn't come from wishing. Comes from action." She gestured back toward the bank. Karen learned that today. As if on cue, the glass doors swung open behind them. Naomi and her daughter turned just in time to see Karen step out, her face ashen, her expression a mixture of anger and shame. The girl tensed, but Naomi remained still, watching as Karen walked stiffly to her car. A few minutes ago, she had been in control, standing behind that counter with all the power. Now, she looked like a woman who had just lost everything. Michael, the branch manager, stepped out moments later, adjusting his tie. He spotted Naomi and walked toward her, his face taut with discomfort. "Mrs. Whitmore," he started, clearing his throat. "I wanted to personally let you know that effective immediately, Karen is no longer employed at this branch." The girl's eyes widened slightly. She had expected consequences, but not this quickly. Naomi, however, remained unreadable. "And what else?" Michael blinked. "Excuse me? You said you take discrimination seriously," she said. "Firing one employee doesn't solve the problem. How will you ensure this never happens again?" Michael hesitated, then straightened his posture. "The regional office is implementing mandatory bias training for all employees, starting next week. And we'll be reviewing internal policies to prevent situations like this from occurring in the future." Naomi studied him for a long moment, then finally gave a small nod. "Good." Michael let out a quiet breath. "And I also want to apologize again, to both of you. I should have been more aware of what was happening in my own branch." The girl looked up at her mother, waiting to see how she would respond. Naomi gave a slow nod. "I appreciate the apology. But understand this, my daughter is just one of many. If I hadn't shown up today, she would have left this bank feeling small, powerless, unworthy. That's what you allowed to happen under your watch." Michael's face burned with shame. "I understand." Naomi held his gaze for a moment longer before turning back to her daughter. "Come on, sweetheart. We have better places to be." Together, they walked away, their heads held high. As they reached their car, the girl looked up at her mother. "So, what happens next?" Naomi smiled knowingly as she unlocked the door. "Now, we keep moving forward. And next time someone tries to belittle you, you remind them exactly who you are." The girl smiled for the first time since walking into that bank. She understood now. Her mother had not just fought for her today. She had set an example. Power wasn't just about status or money. It was about knowing your worth, and never letting anyone take that away. And as they drove off, leaving the bank behind, the girl knew one thing for certain. She would never be made to feel small again.